I love you all so much, and here in front of me is an Engwe P20 electric assist bicycle. What a surprise. Now I find myself in a situation where I can choose a bicycle from the Engwe range, and I said that I would like a bike that has some innovation, something that represents a presentation, a step forward, something special. I wanted a bicycle that is specifically designed for its intended purpose and does not try to solve everything, but is well thought out for one particular thing. And this is why it became the P20, because it is a true urban bicycle. This is evident from several aspects. Firstly, from its dimensions. This is a relatively small bicycle, rolling on 20-inch wheels, which are quite thin, and the entire bike weighs no more than 18.5 kilo, making it particularly lightweight in the field of e-bikes. Now, beyond all this, there are two things that I think are very important. One is that it can be a bit difficult to pedal, and the other is that it doesn't have a chain, but rather a belt. So the drive is done with a carbon belt, which is maintenance-free, meaning you don't have to constantly grease or oil it, and theoretically, it won't break. On the other hand, it is extremely quiet, which is actually confirmed by the Engwe P20. You can really travel silently with it. So this bike, however, precisely because it has extra features, not to mention the hydraulic brake, is not a budget category bicycle. This bike currently costs €1,000, and there is a coupon code that can give you a €50 discount, which is mentioned in the description as usual. But this bike should be viewed as a slightly higher positioned urban bike. Now, let's take a closer look. As usual, we start our introduction with the left handle, which is a rubberized, well-gripped, and decent handle. There is also an onboard system next to it, which can be turned on and off from above, and it is basically not a complicated good device, so it is a fairly primitive display. However, if you think about it, we don't really need too much information regarding this. On one hand, it is visible that the sun is shining down from above, and despite that, it is quite readable. On the other hand, there is a button here that I can press, and below it, I can change the current display under the kilometer reading. Additionally, there is a plus-minus button below that allows me to adjust the level of assistance in 3 steps, and it can also be set to 0. You can turn the device on from the top here, and that's about it. Nothing special. What's more interesting is that there's an arrow here and there, which controls the indicator. I'll turn it on and demonstrate that here, the indicator is flashing at the back, which I think is funny. However, there is nothing at the front. If there were a small LED at the end of the handle, it would greatly help with visibility. One definitely good point is that both the front and rear disc brakes are hydraulic, connected to the bicycle, meaning that the front brake is on one side and the rear brake is on the other. And here is a throttle, which is actually not the kind of throttle you might be thinking of, but in a way it is, because you can press it, and it somewhat propels the bike. However, it is meant for you to push the bike, or to go very slowly, as the throttle allows you to reach a maximum speed of 6 km per hour without pedaling. So it is really for when you need to go very slowly and don't need the assist. Or if you want to push the bicycle, you can do that with this throttle. And that's about it. Now what is interesting here, or definitely useful, is that you can adjust the handlebar height with this quick release solution. And this can be done within a wide range. Additionally, what is also useful is that not only can the bike be folded in half, but with this quick release mechanism, the handlebar can also be folded down, making the bike take up even less space when you want to put it in the trunk of your car, which is really well thought out. Here is the little latch with which we can unfold the entire bike. I will demonstrate this shortly, but in a way that I won't be holding the phone, so you can see it from a distance. Here is the saddle, which is not the fluffy, cushy thing usually given with cheap bare bikes that seem soft and comfortable, but is actually uncomfortable over long distances. This is a proper saddle. There is a small luggage rack, which has a maximum load capacity of 15 kg, while the entire bike has a load capacity of 120 kg. It has an IP5X protection, of course. And here is the battery located behind the saddle and in front of the rear wheel, which is quite small and can be removed, allowing you to charge it. And basically, this is a 36-volt, 9.6 amp-hour battery, which doesn't seem like much, and it isn't, but it is practical in the sense that it doesn't add extra weight to the bike. So, you can see this battery here. Now, here is the belt. You can see that this is not a chain, but a carbon belt. As expected, we have a rear hub motor with a power output of 250 watts and a torque of 42 Newton meters. Therefore, this bicycle, in terms of its design, weight, and performance, absolutely fits within any legal framework, as it is fundamentally designed as an urban bike. Now, what seems a bit strange to me is that, as you can see, this bike has a relatively interesting design, featuring a somewhat industrial style with straight lines. One of its notable elements is the front light, which looks really good and is positioned right at the end of this rod. However, this light does not turn with the wheel, so when you turn, it won't actually shine in the direction you want to go, but rather in the direction you would have gone if you hadn't turned. This aspect wasn't thought through properly. On the other hand, we do have a light at the back, located under the indicators. This lower part essentially consists of the two rear red lights, so the rear light is present, and it also functions as a brake light, meaning that when you brake, it lights up. I might be able to demonstrate this here. And yes, it's on fire. Well, it's normal for the red one. It's just that the white balance isn't quite set right, but believe me, this story is burning red. So this is our bike, and now I'm going to step back a bit and talk about what it's like to ride it. Before we start riding the bicycle, let me show you how to fold it. You see, you need to pull this latch towards yourself, and the mechanism will close. You can place it on this small support located at the bottom of the frame, especially if you don't put it on the pedal. Like this. And of course, we can also do this so we can fold it down. And practically, this is how big the bicycle will be, which is very good because this 18.5 kilograms can be lifted relatively easily. You don't need to work out a lot for it. And since it is also relatively compact, it can be placed in the back of a car without much effort. Now I will fold it back. First the handlebars, and then the bike itself. And we are ready, so it wasn't a complicated operation. I will push down the kickstand. Well, since the story involves a belt drive, there are no gears. It can, always, operate with a gear ratio. And this ratio has been adjusted to find a kind of golden mean, so you can ride slowly, but you can also go fast with it. However, it turns out that if you pedal faster than about 22, 23 kilometers per hour, you start to look quite awkward because you have to pedal at a very high cadence. So with this bicycle, you won't really be able to go fast. But it wasn't really designed for that. My experience is that on one hand, it's really great to ride. Due to the torque sensor, it delivers the 250 watts of power that the rear hub motor can generate very smoothly and gradually. In every situation, it adds the appropriate amount. Here, with the buttons below kilometers per hour, you are not setting how far it should assist, meaning up to what speed in kilometers per hour, but rather how strongly it should assist, which I think is a better solution. If you only use the one setting, you'll need to put in a bit more effort yourself. The 2 setting is a good middle ground, and with the 3 setting, you'll practically reach the level of using a stationary bike. But the fact remains that this bike doesn't move on its own, so you can push the throttle, but that's about it. You can go at 6 kilometers per hour, but to really reach a meaningful speed, you also need to pedal. However, since there is no gearing, it is interesting to consider the situation of what happens when a person is not just riding on flat terrain, but starts to head slightly uphill towards the hills. And my experience is that despite all my fears, because 250 watts is not too much, I started to go up some quite steep streets around here. Since this is a light bicycle, there was a steepness where I had to put in some effort, and I felt like I was actually exercising. But up to a moderately steep street, you could say that you won't reach 20 km/h, but with a speed of 14-15 km/h, you can still get up with relatively easy pedaling. So I was worried that with this bicycle, as soon as the road started to get a bit steep, I would really have to rely on pedaling. However, since this belt drive is quite efficient, and it has 42 Nm of torque, and the whole bike is relatively light, my experience has been that I could relatively easily ride up to, say, the top of Rusadon. Of course, I didn't choose the steepest hills, but rather slightly less steep ones, and I didn't sweat at all. It wasn't like I was struggling, thinking, oh my God, I can't even get up here with this electric bike. but rather it was a pleasant movement. And I definitely didn't feel like I was putting in an especially great effort. So I can say that, despite being considered relatively weak in this category, my general observation is that if you don't live on extremely steep hills, this bike actually provides a lot of assistance to help you reach hilltops or hill crests. And it is by no means a challenge to get up steeper places with it. If your street or the terrain you are riding on is very steep, then you obviously have to pedal as well. Surprisingly, it helps a lot. Now, regarding the range, Danny rode it too, and I also rode it a lot. And we found that the manufacturer claims a maximum range of 100 kilometers. This is possible with some assistance on flat terrain with a light passenger, and it can be achieved under those conditions. However, if a person of normal size, weighing 80-90 kg, uses it, sets the assistance to level 3, and doesn't just ride on flat terrain, our measurements indicate that this bicycle can achieve around 65-70 km with assistance. The good news is that if your battery runs out, you don't need to panic. This is not a heavy bike that becomes unmanageable without extra power. Since it weighs only 18.5 kg, you can still ride it without assistance. It won't be as comfortable, and you'll definitely feel the effort, but you can still ride it comparably to a regular bicycle. If your battery dies, you're not in trouble. You won't have to push it home or bring a charger. You can continue riding, but you'll need to put in more effort. In this regard, it's really well thought out. Moreover, if you're feeling tough, you can remove the battery from the back and ride without it, making the whole bicycle even lighter by a few kilograms. This way you can feel like you're not even using the electric part, but just riding it as a normal bike. However, compared to that, it costs a bit over 1,000 euros. So my verdict is that this is really great for an urban bike. Several people have tried it, including someone who cycles and takes this sport. They also said that this product should be regarded in its proper context. It's not meant for you to ride it down to Lake Balaton, nor is it designed for tearing through the forest. This is typically a bicycle envisioned for an urban environment. It's small, lightweight, and agile. And considering that it has quite a large range, it doesn't go faster than 25 kilometers per hour, but in an urban setting, you generally don't need that speed. So for the purpose for which this Engwe P20 was designed, it is actually an ideal choice. Obviously, I feel that it's a bit of a luxury to have a separate bicycle for every purpose. Generally, people buy one bike to solve their urban, out-of-town, and mountain transportation needs. The scenario where you have a mountain bike, a city bike, and a long-distance road bike is relatively rare in this country. However, if you only need a city bike, then the 1,000 euro Engwe P20 is a relatively decent choice. Honestly, I can't really find fault with it when considering its intended use. Of course, you could criticize the placement of the front light, why there are no side reflectors or indicators, or why the frame is so straight, simply because you don't like it specifically. But if we're being honest, these are minor compromises. To be fair, right out of the box, I wouldn't say it's immediately usable. I expected to receive a box where I could fold it out, and the bike would be inside. I would unfold it and then go wherever I wanted. But no, the front wheel is separately removed, and you have to attach it yourself. It's definitely worth checking if the brake levers are properly adjusted, and it's also worth checking if the tires are properly inflated. I still make sure to double check the more visually prominent or better fitting screws to ensure everything is in order. But really, once you put it together, you nerd it out over it, and from then on, you're relatively good with it, right? And it was actually quite nice to get around on it, which might obviously stand out as a youthful trait, since there's no suspension at the front or back, which is why there are some infrastructural issues in the surrounding cycling network that can be a bit painful for the seat, and the handlebars can also shake. But this is obviously not primarily the bike's fault, but rather the road network's. However, you can somewhat live with this compromise. So, the Engwe P20 is a well-usable, lightweight, small, and charming bicycle. I won't honestly say that I used it a lot by driving to a point where I could park, taking the bicycle out of the trunk, unfolding it, and then going about my business 5, 6, 8 to 10 kilometers away. Then, at the end of the day, I would return to the car, fold it up, put it back in the trunk, and head home. So this could typically be a commuter bicycle, especially if you park in a P-plus area or leave your car at home every day. From there, you can ride the bicycle to your destination much more comfortably and predictably than you would with public transportation. And you haven't even gotten a taste of it yet. So, that was the short video of the Engwe P20. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments. I know that the €1,000 price tag seems relatively high for a weak bike. At the same time, I believe that many people do not need more than this, especially those who live and commute around the capital. So, considering the assembly quality of the product, the clever ideas it has, such as the hydraulic brakes, the belt drive, the removable battery, the compact foldability, and the lightweight design, I believe it is no coincidence that it costs this much. Hopefully, this will also be a durable machine. The Engwe has been on the market for quite some time now, so the parts supply is established. There can be no complaints. There are plenty of user experiences available. So, if you are more interested in the bicycle, feel free to check out the Engwe website, as the link is included in the description. Additionally, there is a written review about it on mobilerega.eu, if you prefer to read. So that's all I have to say about this bicycle. I hope I wasn't boring. If you'd like to see more similar content on this channel, then press all the buttons you can, and you won't miss out on our future content either. Now, I thank you for your attention. Goodbye.